Well, thank you very much. Shalom. Greetings to you all. Now, congratulations go to Anna and Monty on the birth of your new grandchild. And whether you're here or a world away, you know what? The world finds out things very quickly. We all know. We all send goodwill and love to you. We are a community together, my friends. Community strengthens and unifies us. And having just celebrated a special festival dedicated to freedom from fear, remember that it is fear that drives us deeper into restrictive, painful ego states and away from a direct experience of what's really our true nature, and it is our essence of our true nature, a nature of kindness, compassion, and energy of sharing of thoughts, feelings, hopes, and dreams and wishes that unites this great fellowship of soul searchers, coming together every week in this community house of spirit, Beth Ruach. So once again, please go ahead and invite everybody you know, physically or spiritually, to gather and share from Psalm 133, the Hine Matov. Come together. Hine Matov. Benai. Shed B'tachim Gam. Yachad. Hine Matov. Benai. Shed B'tachim Gam. Yachad. How good and how pleasant it is for brothers and sisters together. Community. 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 Together. I love the community we have, friends, and I love the things that we do. I mean, the music and poetry evenings are going fantastic, and I really enjoy those. Now, friends, last week with the establishment of the priesthood, a major event took place. And it's one that is in keeping with the idea of God's not creating, but separating and dividing, which we saw in Genesis. And as we saw, the priesthood was separated from the people. And I'm emphasizing that to you now because the entire rest of the Torah is going to be based upon this concept. You'll see this in everything now. This imitatio Dei, imitation of God, by dividing, by separating. And it will affect food, behavior, the general living of life, all about to be seen through the lens of separation and division, and in particular of impure and pure. Unclean and clean in opposites, a division, a separation, but especially between this concept of impure and pure. And that's what you're going to be reading about almost all the way through now. Now, the Hebrew terms here for impure and pure are often frequently, translated as the unclean and the clean also. I would say each translation uses both sets of terms pretty well interchangeably, but neither pair of terms quite conveys the sense of the Hebrew, and they do mean different things in Hebrew. So in biblical Hebrew, the terms for the impure and the pure are tameh and tahor. And those two words have two completely different roots, which conveys much more clearly that these terms refer to two distinct conditions, each of which has a particular status. So, by that I mean that being tameh, or impure, is more than merely being untahor, which is pure, right? Because the words are completely different and come from something completely different. So to be tameh is to be in a particular condition, the qualities of which are invisible, but which can be transmitted to other persons or objects simply by contact. Everything you're about to read centers on this one idea. Now, one comes to be in a condition of being impure as a result of specific occurrences, from menstruation, from other flows of the body's sexual organs, from a woman's giving birth, a week if it's a male baby, 2 weeks if it's female, from contact with a corpse, from certain forms of leprosy, or from contact with persons or objects that are currently tameh, impure. Now, one may also become impure from a forbidden sexual relationship, and one performs, certain acts to, restrict and remove this condition, such as, separation, bathing, and in some circumstances, sacrifice. then one can return to a condition of being tahor, pure. It's a given. You will always be able to return to that condition. So I want you to watch for this, because this becomes the dominant theme for the entire rest of the trip, as I'm sure you noticed in Leviticus 11:46 with the list of foods that we concluded with, when we were told food to eat, not eat, but not why. The whys are never given. And even its concluding sentence gave no clue. This is the instruction, and the word for instruction, of course, is Torah, for animal and bird and every living being that moves in the water, and for every being that swarms on the earth, to distinguish, la'abdil, between the impure and the pure, and between the living thing that is eaten and the living thing that shall not be eaten. Right? So there's no reason, it's just we're told that it's all got to do with impure and pure. Now, we will distinguish everything from here on, friends. And this week, we actually have another of our double parsha weeks. In fact, 3 of the next 4 are double parshas, almost in an effort to whip through the balance of this book of instruction. And it continues with this particular theme. Now, we just finished reading about the impure condition of menstruation and leprosy. And this week we get both of them. Tazria, she will bear seed, and Metzora, leprosy. So if you really want to pass on a week, this may be it. Although, what I tell you is that there are some things we've gotten better at, and recent biblical scholarship has improved translations and terms tremendously. And this week is actually a case in point. Friends, this is actually an incredibly misunderstood parsha, because it's not just about, menstruation and leprosy. It's a lot deeper than that. So it's really misunderstood. Baby, do you understand me now? Sometimes I feel a little mad. Well, don't you know, no one alive can always be an angel. When things go wrong, I seem to be bad. I'm just a soul whose intentions are good. Oh Lord, please don't let me be misunderstood. Now, wasn't Eric Burden something else? What a voice. That song about being misunderstood. And of course, he was supposedly the Eggman from that famous Beatles song, although some think that John was referring to himself after having recently just met Yoko. So even though we are in a time of separation and division, we're all still brought together by events that can affect any one of us. So we pray for our good friend Stephen, who lost his baby brother Lars suddenly. That interconnected energy unites us and heals us. It's about a community, and this whole parsha is about community. So let us send out healing energy to all who need it. Think of those you know. For them, for everyone, for Shelley, still in mourning for Lindsay, for the bee, for all of you, for love, for everyone, for kindness, healing wishes, goodwill, and love that you send out. It just keeps circling the world, finding those in need. So thank you, each and every one of you. It's about community, and this whole parsha is about community. Me, Shabbat, Avotenu, Makor Racha, Limotenu, may the source of strength who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage, make our lives a blessing, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit. Let us say, Amen. Mishaberach, let us all have our spirits renewed, my friends. Now, everything now is introduced to us as laws in this book of instructions. And believe it or not, we find out about the laws regarding menstruation, mentioned only once before in the story of Rachel and Laban. Well, here we find out about the impurity that it brings, and for how long. Blood is powerful. It always has been. It is intimidating. We are distressed at the idea of contact with another person's blood. And like with Lady Macbeth, we associate blood with guilt. Out, damn spot. Now, for a woman, it's a natural part of her life from the time of puberty, visible each month. But for a man, it's a sign that something is wrong. It's almost always associated with injury or severe illness. And I'll tell you right now, this book of instruction was written by a man. Leviticus 15:19. And when a woman will have an emission, her emission will be blood in her flesh. She shall be in her impurity 7 days. And anyone who touches her will be impure until evening. And, so it's just the touch alone is what's going to infect you. We're going to talk about that. But then we move on from blood. Leviticus 13:2. When a person will have a swelling or rash or bright spot in his flesh's skin, and it becomes an affliction of leprosy in his flesh's skin, he will be brought to Aaron the priest or to one of his sons, the priest. Now notice these two parshas about blood and about leprosy, and it's not really about leprosy, but they're all about visible differences. When one has a visible problem on his or her skin, it is a special distress. It's embarrassing. It's frightening. One feels ugly. One feels separate. One does not know how long it will last. One wonders, are others making fun? Or are they pitying? Or are they feeling disgusted? And that's not really changed that much, has it? See, the laws in this section convey that it is not that the person has done something wrong. That's something that our society tends to do. That it is not something intrinsic in the person's behavior. You see, being impure because of a skin condition does not mean that one has done something wrong, any more than being impure because one happens to be menstruating means that one has done something wrong. The issue is that a qualified person, and a qualified person is simply a priest, should identify the condition. Steps should be taken to prevent it from spreading, and the afflicted person should become well and return to the community. It is about community health and well-being and returning. It has an almost Borg-like quality to it. The collective, the community, must not be infected. And there's that all-important concept, unique to Judaism, teshuvah, returning. So even when the Torah begins a long dissertation about leprosy, and not really leprosy as we understand it, it's a terrible translation in this book. We'll talk more about that later. The biblical word for leprosy was metzora, which is the name of one of these two parshas, for which there is a midrashim, or a story, which says that the word is actually shorthand for motzi shemra, which meant someone who brings out a bad name of someone else, or what we would call a slanderer. And I want you to remember that when we read about Miriam in Numbers 12. And again, that the translation is terrible. It's not really leprosy as we understand leprosy. It's a skin blanching. It's a whitening. It's a lack of pigmentation. Now, what you will notice is that there's, is that this whole thing becomes very technical in its approach, and so you just lose what it is. So what you don't notice is that there's probably a technical error in translation here, and it has one that has more to do with punctuation than anything. But what scholars have recently concluded is an impure person's contact with an object makes it impure entirely and instantly. And we saw that earlier with that quote where it says, you can't touch anything. This tells us something about the nature of impurity. It spreads throughout a person or object, and it is not because of any kind of creature like bacteria. It is simply a pervasive condition instantly. So what happens? Well, the afflicted sees the priest. Now, there's never any mention of doctors in the Torah. It's not about illness. It's not about medicine. It is about purification and return. The priest over